It is no longer news that Nigerians were seen in large numbers in almost all parts of the nation on Tuesday, the 27th of February 2024, protesting over the high cost of living, inflation, insecurity, and hardship in the country. Do we say they are demanding for too much? Where has this led to? And at the end of the protest, what is the resolution? Or is it going to be another jamboree by the NLC? These and other stories making the rounds we'll be looking at this morning on Now Streaming. You're welcome to Now Streaming on ACNNTV, reaching you live from the city of Abuja. I am your anchor, Rachel Ebunu. Also, we'll be discussing weather and climate change. And to do justice to some of the questions before us is chemist Timothy Shamang. Did I get it?
Yes,
all right.
thank you.
He is a chartered chemist and chairman of the Chemical Society of Nigeria, Abuja chapter. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Okay.
And joining us virtually is engineer Ayodele Awi. He is a water engineer, Oxford University scholar, and a public policy expert. Viewers, remember you can join the conversation via the numbers showing on your screen and through our various social media platforms. It is always a pleasure hearing from you. Climate change has become a great challenge to our generation, and its impact is felt in almost every society in the world. Nigeria, as a developing country with a population of about 200 million, is likely to be adversely impacted by climate change due to its vulnerability and low coping capability. Evidence has shown that climate change impacts on Nigeria rise from various climate change related to causes experienced due to the increase in temperature, rainfall, sea level rise, impact on freshwater resources, extreme weather events, flooding, drought in the north, and increased health risks. What is the impact of climate change and how has it affected Nigeria's economy? Our guests will be answering some of the questions before us. You're welcome back. We still have with us here in the studio is chemist Timothy Shamang. He is a chartered chemist and chairman of the Chemical Society of Nigeria, Abuja chapter. Thank you for still being with us.
Thank you very much.
Yes. And virtually we still have engineer Ayodele Awi. He's a water engineer, Oxford University scholar, and public policy expert. Thank you for still being with us here on Now Streaming program. I will throw this question first to a layman on the street who doesn't know what a climate change is or weather. You know, it's okay, these things happen, it comes, we have rain, we have the sunshine, we have this and that. What is weather and climate change? I'll throw this to you first.
Okay, thank you. From the elementary geography, made to understand that weather is the state or condition of the atmosphere in a particular area at a particular time. And you look at, when you are talking about weather, you are looking at the temperature, humidity, the pressure, talking about the wind. And so it's something that we relate with. You come out in the morning, you look at the atmosphere, you look at the cloud. It could be a kind of dusty, you say, this weather have changed. It could be a kind of cloudy, this weather have changed. So that is where you relate with what you see around the atmosphere, what's happening.
Yeah.
All right, that is weather. But when we talk about climate, we are talking about the weather condition over a long period of time, a minimum of 30 years, looking at a particular region, not necessarily restricting it to a particular place. For example, the weather in Abuja, we're in Abuja, but in different parts of Abuja, the weather might be different.
Okay.
Yes. If you see during rainy season, sometimes it might be raining somewhere in Wise, and when you move to Gariki, you won't see rain. So they have two different weather within the city. But when we talk about climate, climate has to do with a region.
Okay.
All right, not just a particular place, and it's the weather condition accumulated over a period of time. Then you monitor it. In geography, you will just take all these weather components of weather and follow it and study the pattern and see, and then you now classify it. For example, our climate condition here is different from climate condition in Europe.
Definitely.
All right.
Yeah.
So that is climate.
Okay.
All right. So when now come about climate, when we talk about climate change, now in this part of the country, in this part of the world, we have majorly two seasons. We have the rainy season and the dry season. And even within Nigeria, the rainy seasons is up north here. It's not the same with the length of the rainy season down south. That is, their weather is somewhat slightly different with us. Okay, now in up north there, you can predict that, okay, normally rainy season start maybe April. All right, but sometimes you will see there's a change in that. The rainy season might delay or might be early.
Yeah.
Now, when you observe that, that will mean that there's climate change.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about, that climate change. So a lot now, we also look at weather, the temperature. Okay, sometimes, okay, look at Harmattan time, you have cold and everything, and you have the period where you experience that cold weather. But sometimes you discover that that period, you won't experience that cold weather. Instead of cold weather, you have heat.
Yeah. Like, so, it happened some weeks back. I just didn't understand what was going on. A week we have the Harmattans, and before you know it, the heat is there again,
and the rain.
And there was a little rain. Yes.
So these are all climate change. To observe some change in the climate that you used to know. That's what they call it. That's what we now talk about climate change.
Okay.
Yes. So when you go further, how does that affect, what are the effects and what are the causes? We'll talk about that later. But just to lay the foundation, what is weather, what is climate, and what is climate change.
Okay.
Okay.
And does chemical disposal affect the climate change?
Yes. Now, this is in chemistry, or there's a term we call greenhouse gases.
Okay. Now,
these greenhouse gases are gases that are released into the atmosphere. What are the greenhouse gases? The carbon dioxide, the methane. And all of these greenhouses are from our human activities, from industry, the vehicle, emission, and all of those. These are all chemical components, but they are gases. They contribute to this climate change enough. In fact, the greenhouse gases, they lead to what we call global warming. The global warming is what we call the rise in temperature. In fact, as it is that there is between 2 to 3 degrees Celsius rise in temperature.
Yeah.
Okay, and that they're affecting a lot of things. They are going to affect the weather, affect the rainy season, affect desertification. Okay, there is spread of desertification, and all of this. So chemical activities have impacted a lot to the climate change, and that has been globally, and that's why we have the United Nations Conference on Climate Change. They just had it last day. That's the COP28. So the government all over the world coming together to talk and address this issue. All right. So how to mitigate this climate, because it's affecting our life. It's affecting everything. You just in your introduction talk about affecting health. Yeah. It's affecting food security. It's affecting our economy.
Okay. Now, what do you say in places like Borno, Sokoto, Zamfara, that their temperature at times hits up to 40-something degrees? How is it different from Abuja, Jos, and other parts of the country?
Now, if you look at a little study about Nigeria, geography. Those regions, we call them the Sahel. They have their climate, we call it Sahel.
Okay.
All right. Now, let's take, for example, like Maiduguri. It used to have what they call a very important water body called the Lake Chad, that span kilometers, that were used for agriculture and fishing. And as we speak today, that Lake Chad has been reduced to almost half. And this is because of what we're talking about, a rise in temperature. Okay, that's effect of global warming. And so it affects their life. Sokoto, Zamfara, up north there, the temperature increase. Now, coming down south, because we still have some vegetation, that vegetation like trees, forests, move down, so the effect or the change is not that impactful like that. Okay. But they also have their own share of this climate change. Which is flooding.
Okay, we'll get to that. Yes, okay. Engineer Ayodele is still there. I'll throw this question to you. What are the factors that influence weather and climate change?
Thank you very much. Now, most of the factors that influence the changes in climate are factors that are, human contributed. They call them anthropogenic factors. Now, and that's because our actions have a way of changing, what is happening within our environment. So, for example, if you want to look at weather, there are parameters you want to look at. One is called the relative humidity, which is basically the amount of moisture that you have in the air. The solar radiation, which is the sunshine, the amount of sunshine that is getting to the earth and how that is affecting. Then you talk about temperature, rainfall, evaporation, and other parameters like that. Now, what happens is that with human activities, we emit gases. Those gases that are called the greenhouse gases. Our activities emit those gases. They come from energy production, emission of, for example, our vehicles, our homes, the activities, industrial activities that we carry out. They emit all these gases. What happens is that these gases get into the atmosphere and they begin to trap the heat. So the heat that should go and escape from our atmosphere into the outer space, they are trapped by these greenhouse gases. And they are not able to escape into the outer space. Now, the consequence of that is that the temperature of the temperature of the atmosphere begins to increase. The earth itself begins to warm up. The more of such gases you have that is being emitted, the more they can trap temperature, the more they can trap energy that is, getting out, and the more the surface temperature is going up. And this is how we have contributed to climate change. So if you look at it, many countries of the world are now beginning to talk about, cutting down on emissions globally because it affects. And then I think another important thing to look at about climate change is that the impact of climate change can be felt, on a global scale. Even though your emission from one place can be local, the impact and the effect of climate change can be global. So I wanted to make that point. Now, there is something called the International Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, which was part of the ones that they were the ones that put together, or we call them the UNFCCC. Now, they are the ones that put together the COP28, which is where the world come together to discuss the issue of climate change. And I think particularly everyone is thinking about cutting down emissions. Countries are beginning to make pledges to say we don't even want to have transportation systems that contribute hugely to emission. For example, and if you look at our activities, bush burning, you see a lot of people that still practice bush burning, which release carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is one of those strongest greenhouse gases that can trap it in the system. We still have lots of vehicles, And the older the vehicle is, the more the carbon emission from that vehicle. So we still have a lot of activities that we do in our daily lives that contribute to carbon emission. And this is the problem. The more carbon we release into the atmosphere, the more we contribute to greenhouse gases, and the more this translates to global warming. Now, with the global warming, that is what is now causing things like flooding. And if we think about it, it's, you see that recently we've been having lots of rainfall within a short period of time. Rainfalls that initially will fall, and there are many factors to it. Also deforestation. Before, we used to have a lot of grasses everywhere. Now we have paved surfaces. When rain falls, the rain that should have gone into the soil do not have anywhere to go because we've paved all the surface. People put concrete everywhere. We tar our roads. We remove all the forest. There's no longer forest or, trees that can absorb this rain. And so when the amount of rainfall falls, easily they can be, easily they can trigger flooding because they don't have the soil to go into anymore. They have limited open soil surface to now go into, and so most of them overrun on the streets and they contribute to flooding. And again, the flooding then impacts our lives, impacts livelihood. We've seen how floods have destroyed farmlands, hectares of farmlands in certain places, and that again now contributes to food insecurity because people who have planted and expecting harvesting lose all their crops due to this flooding, and then we come back to the issue again. So it's like a cycle. Our activities contribute, and these things then impact us and drive us further into poverty.
All right, thank you very much, Engineer. Like he has already touched a bit about what leads to flooding, how the climate change can lead to flooding, and globally and even in Nigeria. And one other thing is the challenges that are being faced by this weather and climate change in Nigeria.
Yeah, just like he just rightly said, he mentioned some of them, food insecurity, which is the major, talking about flooding. Now, the other one was talking about desertification. When there is spread of desert, that land is no more arable because you can't plant in the desert. And that's what affected most in the north, the Sahel region. Talking from the north to the Niger, Mali, and that also is affecting our security. It's increasing. People are now migrating because when there is no water, when there's desert, they move down south. In fact, somebody just said that more people are now migrating to the south. Now, it causes a lot of insecurity. They want to go and displace those that are already in the south so that they have, amongst these people are they are pastoralists. That is, they rear animals, cows, and they move around. So increasing our insecurity challenge. That's another aspect of it. Food insecurity, just like what we're saying now. We are having this issue. We have not had this kind of food challenge in Nigeria before. Now, it's a combination of many factors. You have the security angle there, the banditry and all those. We have the climate change factor. Because those people far north, they used to farm. We just talk about the lake charge. The lake charge provide agricultural activities around that place because the water from the lake charge, they use it in farming and fishing. And that water is no more there. So you could see that it's affecting food security. So the food produce we normally produce from Nigeria is drastically reduced. And then population is increasing. So that's why I said, yes. So that's why I'm saying that the government addressing this issue by dishing out and paying this, they are not really addressing the issue. They don't have to look at it critically. What are the factors? Put all the factors together and they look at. So climate change is also part of it. So it also affecting health. Affecting health. When there's heat, he was just talking about there's already radiation that this climate change that comes in affecting the skin. We have the infrared ray coming from the sun that is trapped, that increase the temperature of the earth globally. We have the ultraviolet rays that come from the sun, which is a result of depletion of ozone layer. And these ultraviolet rays affect the skin. When they come to disease, they can cause skin cancer. All right. So there are other, in fact, the COP28, we're talking about that. The angle that they're now focusing is how climate change affects health. I've tried to address that COP28 that held last year. So it's a combination, it's affecting the human life all. And just like what it says, it's a global effect.
Global thing.
Now, but the challenge we have in Nigeria and the poor countries or the developing countries, we don't have the capacity, the financial and the technical know-how to mitigate these effects, unlike the developed world. That is the challenge we have. And unfortunately, that the contributors to this global change mostly are the industrial, the developed world. They have high industrial activities. So it's a lot for all of
It's
it.
a lot. I think we need to call you back because we are running out of time. Engineer Ayodele, as a water scientist, what can you say about Nigeria's waterway and how it's affected the country positively or negatively? And also, what's your advice to the government in curbing the effect of weather and climate change, and also improving our educational tools in the science sector? So many questions in one. If you can just wrap it all.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, we often say something that water is life. And I think everybody believes that. Over the history of human development, you would always find that there is development around water. But on the contrary, it is so sad that we have not seen the kind of investment in water development that we should see. If water is life, truly, why then is it that we don't pay attention to water development or the waterways development? I'll give you an example. Now, 30, 40 years ago, there are waterways in Nigeria that would see lots of ship movements between the south and the north for economic activities. And over time, most of those rivers became, navigation became impossible across most of those rivers, particularly because they were silting up. Silting up is the situation where the river, the river is being filled with sand, and nobody is doing anything about it. And so the volume of water in the river reduced over a period of time, and then nothing is being done about it. And those kind of ship movements do not occur anymore. There is also the way it affects livelihood. You go to rural communities. Most of these rural communities depend on farming and fishing for their daily livelihoods. But when impact of climate change comes, they lose volumes of their water. Some of the lakes are drying up. Some of the rivers are silting up. And so the fishes in these rivers begin to migrate or they die. They either migrate completely or they die. And so those people lose access to what feeds them. And even their crops begin to suffer the impact of that. So I think there is a lot of effort and intentionality that we need to pay attention to. And I just want to touch on what the speaker also said. This issue of herders-farmers clashes. There is a lot of attribution that we can also make to climate change there. Like he said, the migration of, the people who are naturally herders to the south just to be able to also feed their animals is beginning to challenge the, the space of land or the arable area that is available to them. They are just looking for a means of survival, while the people who are naturally farmers are also feeling threatened. And that is what is promoting the clashes. So I think there needs to be a lot of investment into the water sector, develop the awareness, let people understand the importance of learning about water, of improving the education on water, make water accessible. I'll give you another example. Today in Nigeria, everybody provides their own water. Government does not. The sector is completely unregulated. To a large extent, people sink boreholes anywhere. I remember a few years ago, there was something that happened in Abuja that a lot of scientists started talking. Maybe it was an earthquake or something. But the truth is this: if you have a wall, and every day somebody comes and punch a hole in the wall, everybody comes punch another hole in the wall. That's what we do when we bore, with all these balls. One day there is going to be the final punch on that wall that will bring that wall down. Many countries today don't allow indiscriminate. We do that in Nigeria because we are blessed with good, a good land, a good earth crust. But the problem is that if we continue to drill those holes indiscriminately without regulation, we're going to get to a point where we weaken the system. And there can be a lot of seismic, activities that can affect the population again. So I think government really needs to pay attention to many things that are affecting us. There is a water that we can harness, invest in, and make sure that there is public water supply for people. If there is public water supply, then we can control, the indiscriminate drillings of boreholes that affect us. Again, we need to also pay attention to, the pollution of water. We have seen in the past how water pollution has killed. In fact, if you check the news, you will see in time past where we've had series of sicknesses and health crisis because of pollution of water or because of overdosing of water from a chemical plant. And these are things we need to pay attention to, because if the activity of Mr. A pollutes the underground water system, then it can affect the entire population within that region. And so we need to say, how do we ensure that our water sources are protected? How do we ensure that we can navigate through the river systems again and be able to supply food from, supply food from the north to the sea, or supply other things from the south to the north? So a lot of things that we need to think about in terms of navigation systems, in terms of our waterways, in terms of development of our water. And lastly, power generation. It's so sad that as many dams as we have in Nigeria today, we are struggling with power. It's such a shame. There are many hydropower plants in Nigeria, and the hydropower system have never worked. All we need to do is to invest. In fact, there are countries today that are generating more than the power supply that they need. And they are paying their countries to consume, they are paying their citizens to consume more power because they are generating more than enough. But we have the dams there, we have the hydropower dams, and nobody is talking about how we can invest in them to solve the problem of electricity. If we solve that problem, many of our economic problems will be, alleviated. So there's a lot that needs to be talked about and done in this sector generally.
Thank you so very much, Engineer. He has educated us a lot, and I hope every other person, not just the government, is listening to what he has to say this morning. So before we go, I'm sure we're going to call you back because we have a lot to talk on this. As a teacher, what can you say about our educational sector in teaching weather and climate change in the 21st century? And is this thing going on in our schools these days? Just in 60 seconds, if you can just shorten it.
Okay, as a teacher, the teaching of weather and climate in the 21st century should shift from just teaching the concept, but to inculcate in the students a sense of responsibility to take responsibility in contributing in solving the problem of weather and climate change, because all of us are culprit to this. We affect it. Just talk about bush burning. You just a lot of domestic activities that we do. In fact, even our lifestyle contribute. What type of now we don't go vegetable. We don't go organic. We prefer all this fried and all this. All these activities contribute, affect the weather and climate. So the teaching of weather and climate in the 21st century, starting from elementary school, or what we call a primary school, should begin to teach and tell them and inculcate in their sense of responsibility in contributing to, in one way or the other, to finding solutions to the weather and climate change, because it affects all of us. So instead of just, of course, weather is this, climate just, that is the basic concept. And all over the world, bring it live. How does the activities, what they do around, burning tires, burning papers, all of this affect the weather and affect the climate. So this is what, as a teacher, bring it in home to the students.
Thank you very much for your vast knowledge. We've learned a lot this morning, and we're going to call you back to go deep into how it affects the economy, especially in Nigeria here. We are so grateful for your contribution, and to Engineer Ayodele, thank you so very much. This is something that affects everyone. It is not just the government, it is on us all. So do what you need to do to avert this. This is where we draw the curtain on today's edition of Now Streaming. Thank you for your time. Let's do this again. Same time, same station tomorrow. Remain blessed and stay safe. I am Rachel Ebunu. Bye for now.